In the heart of the Xyra Nebula, where stars pulsed like slow heartbeats and galaxies spiraled in silent dances, there floated a palace so vast it defied imagination. Suspended in the void between two dying suns, the royal palace of Veora shimmered like a jewel forged from moonlight and stardust. Its towers stretched into infinity, spiraling upward into domes of translucent crystal that refracted the nebula's glow into cascades of emerald and violet. Inside, gravity obeyed only the whims of the royal family, and corridors twisted like ribbons through time and space. This was the seat of the Xyra, a race of elegant, green-skinned humanoids with hair like spun silver and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark, like distant constellations. They were ancient, wise, and fiercely protective of their lineage. At the center of it all sat Queen Lyra, ruler of 7 star systems, mother of the last pure-blooded Xyra heir, and guardian of the celestial bloom. A sacred flower said to hold the memories of 1,000 generations. Lyra stood at the edge of the Grand Oculus, a circular platform open to the cosmos, where the vacuum of space kissed the palace's invisible barrier. Her long white hair floated as if underwater, and her emerald skin shimmered under the soft bioluminescent glow of the palace walls. She wore a gown woven from the silk of star moths, its fabric shifting colors with her emotions. Now a deep royal blue, tinged with gold at the edges, signaling both authority and anticipation. Below her, in the Hall of Echoes, the air hummed with tension. The High Council had gathered, their voices a low drone of concern and disbelief. A human had arrived, not through war, not through invasion, but through a malfunctioning jump drive that had flung him across dimensions into the heart of Veora. His name was Darien Vale. A cartographer from Earth, he had been mapping gravitational anomalies near the Kuiper Belt when his ship, the Stardust Mariner, was caught in a rogue singularity. One moment he was sipping lukewarm coffee and recalibrating sensors. The next, he was tumbling through a kaleidoscopic tunnel of light and sound. His body stretched and compressed like taffy, until he crash-landed in the royal courtyard in a smoking, sparking wreck of metal and wires. He had emerged, dazed and covered in soot, wearing a jumpsuit with property of Solstice exploration, stitched on the chest, blinking up at a sky filled with 3 moons and a sky that pulsed like a living thing. The palace guards, towering Xyra warriors clad in armor that looked like frozen lightning, had surrounded him instantly. Their weapons hummed with restrained energy, ready to vaporize the intruder. But before they could act, Queen Lyra descended from her tower on a platform of pure gravity, floating down like a goddess from myth. She studied the human with narrowed, luminous eyes. He was small by Xyra standards, barely 5.5 feet tall, with messy brown hair, a scruffy beard, and wide, terrified eyes. He smelled of metal, sweat, and something oddly warm, like bread baking in sunlight. He raised his hands slowly, muttering something in a language the translation implants couldn't quite parse. "I come in peace," he said, voice cracking. "Also, I think I broke your flower bed." Lyra didn't smile. The Xyra rarely did. But something flickered in her gaze. Curiosity, perhaps, or the faintest spark of amusement. She waved her hand, and the guards stepped back. She ordered him taken to the Chamber of Stillness, where all foreign beings were observed before judgment. But as she turned to leave, she paused. Something about the way he stood, awkward, trembling yet defiant, stirred a memory deep within her. A prophecy, whispered by the Oracle of Thaleen on the night of her daughter's birth. When the outsider walks through the veil, and the queen sees not a threat but a key, then the bloom shall bloom anew, and the bloodline shall not fade. She hadn't understood it then. Now she wasn't sure she wanted to. Her daughter, Princess Lyra, was waiting in the solar garden, where bioluminescent vines curled around floating orbs of water that held tiny, glowing fish. Lyra was 17 cycles old, barely an adult by Xyra standards, and already the most brilliant mind in the Empire. Her white hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall of moonlight, and her green skin glowed faintly, a sign of her strong connection to the bloom. She was slender, graceful, and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew her destiny weighed heavier than gravity. But beneath that poise was a restless spirit, a hunger for something beyond palace walls, beyond duty, beyond the endless cycle of rituals and political marriages. When the guards brought news of the human's arrival, Lyra dropped her data slate and ran to the observation deck. She pressed her hands against the transparent wall, watching as Darien was led through the Hall of Whispers, flanked by warriors twice his size. He stumbled on a loose tile, caught himself, then gave a sheepish wave to no one in particular. Lyra giggled, something she hadn't done in years. Her handmaidens exchanged glances. The princess never giggled. "He's small," she whispered. "And loud," added Nyra, her chief attendant, a stern Xyrini woman with a permanent frown. "And he keeps asking for bathroom. I don't know what that is, but it sounds indecent." Lyra rolled her eyes. "He's not dangerous. Look at him. He's lost, scared. Probably just wants to go home." "That's not for you to decide," Nyra said. "The queen will judge him. He may be executed, imprisoned, or worse, studied." Lyra's smile faded. Studied. That meant the science enclave would take him, poke and scan him, drain his blood, and dissect his mind until there was nothing left but a hollow shell of data. She clenched her fists. "He didn't come here to hurt anyone. He fell through a hole in space. That's not a crime." "No," Nyra agreed. "But trespassing in the royal palace during the bloom cycle is. And you know what the elders say, outsiders bring chaos. They disrupt the balance." Lyra didn't answer. She just kept watching Darien as he was led away, his head turning in every direction, mouth hanging open at the floating gardens, the singing walls, the fish that swam through the air in bubbles of water. He looked like a child in a dream, and for the first time in her life, Lyra felt something unfamiliar stir in her chest, something warm, fluttering, and utterly terrifying. The next morning, the palace buzzed with rumors. The human had been given quarters in the East Spire, a section reserved for honored guests, though no outsider had ever been granted such a privilege. He had been provided with Xyrini garments, which he wore inside out, a translator implant, which he kept poking with his finger, and a meal of crystallized nectar and sky moss, which he politely declined, asking instead for anything with salt. When questioned about his species, he explained that humans were from a planet called Earth, a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star in a quiet corner of the galaxy. He showed them a hologram of his home. Oceans, forests, cities glowing at night. The Xyrini scientists were fascinated. The council was suspicious. The queen remained silent. Then came the day of the bloom ceremony. It was the most sacred event in the Xyrini calendar, held once every 50 cycles, when the celestial bloom, the last living specimen of the first garden, was said to open its petals and release a pulse of energy that renewed the life force of the royal bloodline. The entire palace prepared for weeks. Hymns were sung in the old tongue. Robes were woven from the threads of dying stars. And the princess, as the heir, was to stand at the center of the ritual, bathed in the bloom's light, to receive the gift of longevity and wisdom. But this year something was wrong. The bloom, usually a radiant sphere of golden light nestled in the heart of the palace, remained closed. The surface was dull, its energy faint. The high priestess, a wizened Xyrini woman with eyes like cracked obsidian, declared it a sign of imbalance. "The universe resists," she intoned. "The bloodline weakens. The heir must prove her worth before the bloom will open." Lyra felt the weight of those words like a stone in her chest. She had trained her entire life for this moment. She had mastered diplomacy, combat, telepathy, and the ancient arts of stellar navigation. She had passed every test, every trial. And yet the bloom refused her. That night, unable to sleep, she wandered the palace gardens. The air was thick with the scent of moon blossoms, and the twin moons cast long shadows across the marble paths. She found herself drawn to the East Spire, where Darien's room was located. Against all protocol, she approached his door. It slid open with a soft hiss. He was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scattered papers and a half-dismantled device that looked like a toaster with wires. He looked up, startled. "Oh, hi," he said, scrambling to his feet. "I was just, trying to fix my comms array. See if I can call home. No luck so far. Your Wi-Fi is different." Lyra smiled despite herself. "You're not supposed to be out of your room." "I'm not out. You're in." She blinked, then laughed. A real, bright sound that echoed through the chamber. Darien grinned. "You have a nice laugh. Not that I've heard many Xyrini laughs. In fact, I think you're the first Xyrini I've ever seen laugh. Do you guys even laugh?" "Only when something is funny," she said, stepping inside. "Which is rare. Most things here are serious." "Yeah, I noticed. Your guards keep glaring at me like I kicked their puppy. They're trained to be vigilant, right? Well, tell them to ease up. I'm not planning to steal the crown jewels. I don't even know what they look like." Lyra looked around. His room was a mess. Clothes piled in corners, strange human objects scattered everywhere. A photo of a dog taped to the wall. "You miss home," she said softly. Darien's smile faltered. "Every second. My dog, Biscuit, probably thinks I'm dead. He's a corgi. Short legs, big heart. Likes to steal socks." Lyra tilted her head. "You care for a creature with 4 legs and no language?" "He's family," Darien said simply. "Just because he can't talk doesn't mean he doesn't love me. Or miss me." Something in his voice made her chest ache. She had never known love like that. Raw, unconditional, unburdened by duty. Her own mother loved her. Yes, but it was a love wrapped in expectation, in legacy, in the weight of 1,000 ancestors watching from beyond the stars. They talked for hours. He told her about Earth, about rain and music and pizza, and the way the sun felt on your skin. She told him about the Xyra, about the silence of space, about the loneliness of being chosen before you're born. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at her descriptions of formal court dances that lasted 3 days. At one point, he tried to teach her a human handshake, then a high five, then ended up giving her a clumsy hug. She froze at first, then slowly, awkwardly, hugged him back. When she finally returned to her chambers, her heart was racing. Not from fear, from something else. The next morning, the High Council convened. The bloom had not opened. The priestess declared that the heir must undergo the trial of reflection, a dangerous mental journey into the core of the bloom's energy, where the soul was tested by visions of past lives and future possibilities. If she failed, the bloodline would end. If she succeeded, the bloom would bloom. Lyra accepted without hesitation. But as she prepared for the trial, Darien was summoned to the Grand Oculus. Queen Lyra stood alone, her gown now a deep, shimmering silver, her eyes unreadable. The human approached nervously, bowing awkwardly. "You have caused quite a disturbance," the queen said, her voice echoing like wind through crystal. "You speak freely. You wander where you should not. You have made my daughter laugh." Darien blinked. Sorry?" "You are not sorry," Lyra said. "And you should not be. Laughter is a rare gift. My people have forgotten how to use it." Darien shifted his weight. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I haven't done anything wrong. I just want to go home." The queen studied him. His messy hair, his worn boots, the way he stood with his hands in his pockets like he owned the place. She saw no malice, no ambition, only honesty, and a kind of quiet courage that didn't announce itself. Then she did something no one in the palace expected. She stepped forward, placed her hand on his chest, and closed her eyes. A soft green light pulsed from her palm, spreading through his body. Darien gasped. It didn't hurt, but it felt like every cell in his body had been dipped in warm honey. Images flashed in his mind. Ancient wars, dying stars, a child with white hair crying in a garden. When the light faded, Lyra opened her eyes. "You are not what I thought," she said quietly. "You carry no darkness, only wonder." Darien swallowed. "Thanks." Then, before anyone could react, the queen turned and summoned her daughter. Lyra entered, her ceremonial robes flowing behind her, her face pale with anticipation. She froze when she saw Darien standing beside her mother. "Daughter," Lyra said, her voice ringing through the chamber. "Approach." Lyra obeyed, heart pounding. The queen placed her hand on Darien's shoulder, then on Lyra's. When the alien queen saw the human male, she began, speaking in the old tongue so that only the royal bloodline could fully understand. She did not see an intruder. She saw a bridge. She saw balance. She saw the future blooming where none believed it could. The court gasped. This was not protocol. This was not law. Lyra continued. "And so I gift you this outsider, not as a servant, not as a prisoner, but as a companion, partner, a heart to match yours." Lyra's breath caught. "Mother, what are you saying?" "I am saying," Lyra said, her voice softening, "be gentle with her." The words hung in the air like a spell. The court erupted in whispers. The high priestess stepped forward, outraged. "This is madness. A human, a male, he cannot carry the bloodline. He cannot stand beside the heir." "He does not need to carry the bloodline," Lyra said, her voice rising like a storm. "He carries something more important, choice, free will, love unbound by duty. And if the bloom refuses to open for tradition, perhaps it will open for truth." Lyra looked at Darien, her eyes wide, her heart racing. He looked just as stunned. You're giving me him? I'm not giving you anything, Lyra said. I'm allowing you to choose. And him. To choose you. Darien took a shaky breath. I don't even know what's happening. I'm from Ohio. I map space for a living. I don't do royal stuff. You don't have to, Lyra said, stepping forward. You just have to be you. The words were simple, but in that moment they changed everything. Later that night, as the palace slept, Lyra snuck into the chamber of stillness, where the celestial bloom rested. She placed her hands on its surface, closed her eyes, and whispered, I choose me. I choose us. And for the first time in 50 cycles, the bloom trembled. A single petal unfurled. Then another. Light poured into the room, golden and warm, spreading through the palace like a sigh of relief. In the grand oculus, Queen Lyra smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in centuries. But far away, in the shadows of the outer rings, a fleet of black ships emerged from the void. Their hulls were jagged, their engines silent. The Vorith had come. Ancient enemies of the Xyrini. They had waited for this moment. The moment the bloodline faltered, the bloom weakened, the queen distracted by sentiment. Their commander, a hulking figure with eyes like burning coals, watched the palace through a scope. The air is compromised, he growled, and the human is the key. Capture him, break her, and burn the bloom to ash. Back in the palace, Darien stood on a balcony, staring at the stars. Lyra joined him, wrapping her arms around herself against the cold. You really think I belong here? He asked. She looked at him, then at the sky. I don't know, but I know I've never felt this way before. Like I'm not just a princess. Like I'm me. He smiled. Well, if we're going to be stuck together, I promise to keep the jokes coming. And to never, ever wear the ceremonial robes inside out again. She laughed, and the sound carried through the night. Unseen, the black ships drew closer, and the bloom, still half open, pulsed with a warning light. Red, not gold. The red pulse of the bloom flickered like a dying star, casting jagged shadows across the crystal walls of the palace. Darien felt it before he saw it. A deep, rhythmic thrum in his bones, like a drumbeat from the edge of time. He turned from the balcony, his eyes wide. That doesn't look good. Lyra's laughter died instantly. She stared at the distant glow within the chamber of stillness, her face pale. That's a warning. The bloom only turns red when the royal line is in mortal danger. Before she could speak again, the palace alarms blared. A low, resonant chime that echoed through every corridor, every chamber, every floating garden. The walls shimmered as defensive shields activated, turning the transparent domes into opaque barriers of energy. From the sky, a shadow fell over Veora. The twin moons dimmed. The stars blinked out one by one. They're here, Lyra whispered. Darien didn't need translation to understand the dread in her voice. He followed her sprint through the twisting halls, his boots slipping on the gravity-defying floors. Xyrini warriors in crackling armor flooded the corridors, their weapons humming to life. Servants and attendants vanished into hidden passages. The palace, once a dream of light and beauty, had become a fortress bracing for war. They reached the royal command spire just as Queen Lyra appeared on the central holo display, her face calm but her eyes blazing. The Vorith have breached the outer rings. Their fleet numbers 12 warships, each armed with null-wave cannons capable of collapsing our shields. They're targeting the bloom, and they're targeting him. Her gaze shifted to Darien. He swallowed hard. Me? Their prophecy speaks of a starwalker from beyond the veil, who will break the Xyrini bloodline, Lyra said. They believe you are that omen, and they will stop at nothing to destroy you, and anyone who stands with you. Lyra stepped forward. Then we won't let them. You will do as I command, the queen said sharply. You and the human will evacuate through the quantum veil. The Science Enclave has prepared a jump pod. You'll be taken to the sanctuary moon of Thelra. It's the only place safe enough. No, Lyra said, her voice firm. I'm not running. Not again. Not while our people fight. This isn't about bravery, Lyra snapped. It's about survival. If the bloom dies, our people fade. If you die, the line ends. You must go. And what happens when they follow me? Lyra shot back. They'll find me. They'll kill me in hiding. At least here I can fight. At least here, I have him. Darien blinked. Wait, him? I didn't sign up for war. You already did, Lyra said, grabbing his hand. The moment you crash-landed in my mother's garden. Something in the way she said it, defiant, fierce, but with a flicker of warmth, made his chest tighten. He looked down at their joined hands. Hers was cool, smooth, slightly translucent in the dim light. His was calloused, human, real, and yet, together, they fit. He took a breath. All right, so what's the plan? Hide? Fight? Diplomacy? I'm good at diplomacy. I once talked my way out of a parking ticket on Mars. Lyra smiled despite everything. We're not going to hide. We're going to the bloom chamber. If it's truly responding to us, then maybe we can awaken it fully. A fully bloomed celestial bloom emits a pulse that can disable all technology within 100 light minutes. It could knock out the Vorith fleet. It could also knock out our shields, Darian pointed out. Then we'll have to move fast. They slipped through the palace's hidden passages, tunnels woven into the very fabric of the structure, known only to the royal family. The air grew colder, the walls pulsing faintly with ancient energy. Darian stumbled more than once, unused to the shifting gravity, but Lyra held his hand tightly, guiding him like a star navigator through a storm. Along the way, they passed murals of Xyra history, great battles, peaceful alliances, the planting of the first garden. One depicted a queen standing beside a being unlike any other, a creature of light and shadow, not of this galaxy. Beneath it, the inscription read, "When the heart chooses beyond blood, the universe bends." Darian stopped to read it. That's kind of poetic. Lyra looked at it, then at him. My ancestors believed love could change the course of stars. I used to think it was just a story. And now, she didn't answer, but her grip on his hand tightened. When they reached the Chamber of Stillness, the door was sealed with a biometric lock, one that required royal DNA and a spoken oath. Lyra placed her palm on the scanner. I am Lyra of House Vale, heir to the bloom, blood of the first garden. I seek the light. The door hissed open. Inside, the celestial bloom hovered in the center of the room, half open, its golden petals trembling like the wings of a trapped bird. The air buzzed with unstable energy. Darian approached slowly, mesmerized. It's beautiful. It's afraid, Lyra said. It senses the darkness coming. He reached out instinctively. Hey, he whispered. It's gonna be okay. Lyra watched as his fingers brushed the outermost petal. A spark leapt between them. Then, slowly, the bloom pulsed once, twice, its light shifting from red back to gold. It's responding to you, she breathed. Me? I didn't do anything. You're here, she said softly. With me. That's everything. They stood together in the glow, the weight of the universe pressing down on them. And in that moment, something shifted. Not just in the bloom, but between them. Darian turned to her, really looked at her. The way her white hair caught the light, the way her green skin shimmered, the way her eyes held galaxies within them. I don't belong here, he said. I'm not royal. I'm not powerful. I don't even know how to fight. You don't have to be, Lyra said. You just have to be you. And that's enough. He smiled. Even if I ask for salt at dinner? Especially then. They laughed, and the bloom bloomed another petal. But the moment didn't last. The chamber trembled. Alarms screamed. The walls cracked as a blast rocked the palace. Through the observation window, they saw it. A Vorith warship, massive and jagged, hovering just beyond the shields, firing relentless salvos. Smaller attack pods detached, slamming into the outer defenses. Xyra fighters darted like fireflies, exploding in bursts of light. They're breaching, Lyra said. We have to activate the bloom now. How? Darian asked. The ritual requires two hearts in perfect harmony, royal and outsider, bound not by duty, but by choice. We have to stand together, hands on the bloom, and mean it. Mean what? This, she said, stepping close. All of this. What we are. What we could be. Darian's breath caught. He looked into her eyes and saw no hesitation, no doubt, only truth. He took both her hands. Then let's mean it. They stepped forward, placing their palms on the bloom's core. Light exploded outward, filling the chamber, searing through the palace, piercing the sky. The bloom unfurled fully, a radiant lotus of golden light, pulsing with a rhythm that matched their heartbeats. Above, the Vorith fleet shuddered. Their weapons died. Their engines failed. One by one, the warships went dark, floating lifelessly in the void. But the pulse didn't stop there. It rippled through the palace, disabling every machine, every shield, every weapon. The lights died, the gravity fields flickered, the holoscreens went black. And in the silence that followed, Darien and Lyra stood bathed in light, their hands still joined, their faces inches apart. Then slowly she leaned in and hugged him. It was soft, tentative, like the first note of a new song, but it carried the weight of everything they had been through. Fear, wonder, defiance, hope. When they pulled away, Darien was grinning like an idiot. "Well," he said, "that was wow." Lyra blushed. Actually blushed, her green skin tinged with lavender. "I've never done that before." "Me neither," he admitted. "Not like that. Not with someone who matters." She smiled. "You're stuck with me now, human." "Good," he said, "because I wasn't planning to leave." But their moment was shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps. The chamber door burst open. Vorith soldiers, tall, armored, their faces hidden behind black masks, stormed in, weapons raised. They must have landed before the pulse hit. At their center stood the commander, his red eyes glowing beneath his helmet. "So," he growled, "the omen and the heir, together at last. How poetic." Lyra stepped in front of Darien. "You won't take him." The commander laughed. "We don't want him. We want you. Alive. The bloom's power flows through royal blood. With you as our prisoner, we can force it to bloom for us." Darien's mind raced. The pulse had disabled technology but not biology. Not strength. Not courage. And then he remembered something. "The bloom's pulse," he whispered to Lyra. "It's still active. It's in the air. In us." She caught on instantly. "If we touch them, they'll be stunned. Maybe even paralyzed. Only if we're close enough." Darien grinned. "Then we'll have to get real close." Before she could stop him, he grabbed a loose crystal rod from the floor, part of the damaged chamber, and charged. "Hey, ugly!" he yelled. "Bet you can't catch me." The Vorith soldiers lunged. Darien dodged, clumsy but fast, leading them in a wild dance around the chamber. Lyra followed, graceful as a storm, using her telekinesis to knock weapons aside. When a soldier grabbed Darien, he twisted, slapped the man's arm with the rod, and the moment their skin touched, the bloom's energy surged. The soldier screamed, collapsing in convulsions. "One down!" Darien shouted. Lyra did the same, touching another with her bare hand. The effect was instant. Another armor giant dropped like a puppet with cut strings. They worked together, him the reckless spark, her the steady flame. He distracted. She struck. He stumbled. She caught him. And every time their hands met, the bloom flared brighter. Finally, only the commander remained. He tore off his helmet, revealing a face twisted by hatred and time. "You think this changes anything? The Xyrini will fall. Your love is a weakness, and weakness dies." Lyra stepped forward, unafraid. "Love isn't weakness. It's the only thing strong enough to survive the dark." She reached for Darien's hand, and together they walked toward the commander. He swung his weapon, a blade of pure void energy. Darien flinched, but Lyra didn't stop. She raised their joined hands and touched him. Light erupted. The commander screamed as the bloom's energy tore through him, not killing, but purging, washing away the corruption, the hate, the centuries of war. When it was over, he collapsed, not dead, but changed. His eyes were clear. His hands trembled. He looked at them. "I remember," he whispered. "We were not always enemies." Silence. Then, from outside, a new sound, the distant hum of engines reigniting. The Vorith fleet, disabled but not destroyed, began to retreat. The battle was over. Back in the palace, Queen Xyra found them in the garden, sitting beneath the floating orbs of water, Biscuit the corgi hologram playing at their feet. Darien was teaching Lyra how to whistle badly. She watched them for a long moment before stepping forward. "You did it," she said. "The bloom is stable. The Vorith are retreating. And you're still here." Darien stood. "I guess I am." Xyra looked at her daughter. "You chose him." "I did," Lyra said. "And I'd choose him 1,000 times over." The queen nodded slowly. Then, to Darien's surprise, she smiled. "Then you are no longer a guest. You are family. And if you ever ask for salt again, I'll have it served on a platinum platter." He laughed. I'll try to contain my excitement. As the twin moons rose and the stars blinked back to life, Darien leaned against Lyra, her head on his shoulder. The universe was vast, dangerous, unpredictable. But in that moment, with her beside him, he knew one thing for certain. He was exactly where he was meant to be, under the twin moons of Veora, bathed in the golden glow of the fully bloomed celestial bloom. Darien Vale and Princess Lyra were wed in a ceremony that defied both time and tradition. The royal palace shimmered with light, its towers draped in vines of moonblossoms and strands of living starlight. Xyra and human guests sat together. Scientists from Earth, Xyra elders, warriors who once opposed the union, now watching with quiet awe. Queen Lyra stood at the front, her gown radiant silver, eyes glistening like distant stars. Darien wore a suit woven from sky silk, tailored to fit his human form, with a single white rose from Earth pinned to his chest, Biscuit's favorite, preserved in crystal. Lyra glowed in a flowing gown spun from the threads of the bloom itself, her white hair crowned with a circlet of living light. No words were spoken in the old tongue alone. Instead, the vows were shared in both Xyra and English, translated by a small, chirping robot Darien had built from scrap parts. I choose you, Lyra said, her voice steady. Not because of duty, but because my soul knew yours before we met. And I choose you, Darien replied, grinning through tears. Even if I still don't understand half the stuff in this palace, especially the bathroom doors. The court erupted in laughter. Even the high priestess cracked a smile. When their hands joined, the bloom pulsed once, sending ripples of gold through the sky. A sign, the elders said, that the universe had blessed the union. They moved into the East Spire, now redesigned into a home that balanced Xyra elegance with human comfort. Floating furniture beside a couch with actual cushions, holographic art next to framed photos of Biscuit in various poses. Darien taught Lyra how to make pancakes. She taught him to meditate without falling asleep. A year later, their first child was born. A daughter with green-tinted skin, tufts of white hair, and Darien's mischievous grin. They named her Mira, meaning wonder. She laughed early, spoke in 3 languages by age 2, and once shut down the palace gravity field just by clapping her hands. 2 years after that came a son, Kalen, who inherited Lyra's calm wisdom and Darien's love of terrible jokes. He once told the High Council, knock knock, during a sacred meeting. They didn't laugh until Queen Lyra did. The Vorith never returned. Some say they remembered their forgotten peace. Others say they still watch from the void. But on Veora, war became a story told to children like monsters under the bed. Darien never returned to Earth. He sent messages, though, recorded tales of love, of stars, of a life beyond imagination. His old colleagues wept. Biscuit, now very old, wagged his tail until his last day. Lyra ruled beside her mother, then after her, not as a distant queen, but as a leader who walked among her people, hand in hand with a human who asked too many questions and always carried snacks. They grew older. Darien's hair grayed, Lyra's glow softened, but every evening, they sat on the balcony, watching the nebula swirl, their fingers entwined. And when their grandchildren climbed onto their laps, they told the same story. Once, a human fell from the sky, and a queen said, "Be gentle with her," and the universe at last smiled.